So we're going to show you what you're going to be doing when you come to the workshop with the measuring of the geometry of the Formula 4 chassis. Several pieces of measuring equipment you're going to be using. You're going to be using a vernier caliper. We're going to use the vernier caliper to measure effectively what would be the damper length. And we do this between these 2 points here and here, just with the internal blade of the vernier. We take a measurement, lock the vernier, read off the measurements. That's your damper length, and you will enter that information into the column here. You'll also need to measure the wheel height, which on this sheet here this column has figures, but on your sheet it will be left blank. And we use the height gauge to measure the wheel height. Now what we want to do to start using the height gauge, we want a 0 figure for our wheel. So we bring the height gauge needle down into contact with the plate, and then we 0 the height gauge. Okay? Once the height gauge is zeroed, we move that away, and then we have a look at our camber gauge. This is our camber gauge. It's measuring 1.75 degrees. It's actually a negative figure, although this scale actually shows it as a positive figure. That's just because we fixed it to the inside of the disc rather than the outside of the disc. We can't fit it on the outside because there's plates in the way. So as long as you remember, this is actually a minus figure, not a positive. Then we move to our DTIA and DTIB. And these are probably the most sensitive pieces of equipment on this rig. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide the toe gauge in till our DTIs make contact. And we're going to slide the gauge forward until we've got roughly 50% of the bar showing at the top and at the bottom. This is to allow the gauges to both move in and out. Once we have positioned this, we want to 0 the dials by rotating the face, the clock face. We do this on both of them. Now I'd like to point out that this is very sensitive, and a very slight knock will knock the gauges out. So please be aware, if you knock the gauge, you're going to have to start the process of measuring again from 0, so you don't want to do that. So once they're set, very careful, don't touch them. Okay, so on our sheet now, we should have, in our first column, we should have a 0 for the wheel height. DTIA and DTIB will both be 0. Camber, where's the camber? Camber will be whatever this is showing. In this case, it's minus 1.76 degrees. And then our spring and damper length in this column here. Once we have all those measurements, we can then adjust the rig. So we come to the turnbuckle here, and we rotate it 2 revolutions. It is marked, so it's easy to keep an eye on. 2 revolutions, and then we then take our measurements again with the vernier. We measure here, lock the vernier, take a reading, enter that in the column. We bring our height gauge in. We can see here that our camber has changed to 1.82 degrees minus. Height gauge we bring in, and we can see that our wheel effectively is raised by 6.35 millimeters, and then we note down what's happened with the DTIs. The DTIs are imperial, which means each line is a thousandth of an inch. This first one, DTIB, the needle is actually on about 10.5 thou. Don't try and split them up, either write 10 thou or 11 thou, but make sure that you do the same thing. If you're rounding it up, continue to round it up. If you round it down, continue to round it down. DTIA has raised by 27 thou, and DTIB has raised by 11 thou. Enter that into the sheet. One of you does need to keep a close eye on the DTIs, because they can go up as well as down. And I think that covers each point.
Thank you.